This is Amy Contrada. I'm with Bill Whatcott in Canada, Calgary. I'm really honored to speak with you, Bill. You're one of the greatest activists, and I think you guys in Canada have a lot more courage than the activists in the US. So anyhow, to introduce you, I would call you a great champion of free speech, and I'd call you the Tommy Robinson of Canada, because you're standing up for free speech, and I know that you're saying things that people don't want to hear. You're defending babies, unborn babies, and I know you're concerned for people who are involved in the LGBT lifestyle. And I would say your approach is something like tough love. What would you say?
I agree with that. This notion that I hate homosexuals is rubbish. And when the left accuses conservative Christians of hate, they're really being disingenuous, because it's them that hate, it's them that tries to destroy our careers, it's them that tries to get us in jail. Most of the violence comes from their side. Most of the defamation comes from their side. Interestingly, was sued for $104 million, and the judge threw out the class action, but said I could be sued for defamation. No one stepped forward, because nothing in my flyer is untrue. What I do is I speak the truth, and I think the truth is a loving thing to share, even when it's hard to share. If you got a kid who's doing drugs and ruining his life, just telling him it's fine is not helpful. You have to tell him he's destroying himself and hurting others. And the homosexual lifestyle and the homosexual agenda certainly destroys the lives of homosexuals, and it is harmful to the entire nation. And we have to speak that truth.
So you're accused of hate speech, when in fact what you're doing is speaking with what I would call real compassion. You know, it's difficult and they don't want to hear it, but that's true love. It's not hate. And you're right, it's the hate on the other side that's coming at you right now. You've got 3 pending actions.
Yeah, I'm making my poor lawyer too busy.
And so one of them is that $104 million lawsuit, which is a civil action that's in Ontario. But right. Just recently, there was a national warrant put out for your arrest for a criminal charge in Ontario. And then there's a third thing going on in Vancouver, which is a transgender activist who's filed a complaint with the Human Rights Tribunal, which is essentially what I would call a kangaroo court.
It is. Did you see the picture of the judge as she's protesting, demanding state-funded daycare and open borders and hate crimes? Like this woman is a lunatic on the left.
So what we're really dealing with is a justice system that's anything but just.
In Canada, I don't think it's an overstatement to say in some ways our government is becoming as corrupt and our justice system as corrupt as many third world dictatorships. We just had a huge payout to these homosexuals who were like busted in the 1970s, committing indecent acts, correctly arrested under the laws of the time. They have suffered no injustice. Zoolander, our prime minister, actually his name's Trudeau, I call him Zoolander. He gave them $140 million, and then he gave the law firm, and they didn't even take the class action to trial. It's the same law firm that's suing me for $104 million. My lawyer, Dr. Lugosi, looked at it and said they probably did $100,000 worth of work on this gay rights class action, and the government paid the law firm $20 million tax dollars. $20 million for $100,000 worth of work. That is corruption on par with the Philippines or Uganda. This is what Canadians have tolerated governing them. And now, of course, they're going to spend probably over $100,000 between extraditing and prosecuting me for some very healthy and decent flyers that was put in this shame parade that was spewing hate. So homosexuals are running around with pictures of Jesus on their crotch, and the police never arrested them.
Well, they're not only doing that, but they're walking around stark naked.
That's actually a criminal offense as well.
Right, in front of little children who are standing on the sidewalk. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, my flyer has nothing hateful. It's accurate medical information. Some of it's sourced from mass resistance. And it's biblical truth that, you can be set free if you repent of this lifestyle.
So on our massresistance.org website, we put up a report last night.
I bought this book, and I read the whole thing from cover to cover. I highly recommend it.
And is that part of your message?
That is part of my message.
The health
yes.
hazards.
It is. Like my flyer talked about their health hazards.
So it's not only a spiritual issue, it's a public health issue as well.
Yeah, and it's also a religious liberty issue. The homosexual agenda is ruthless in the way it's trying to silence dissent. And it's a parental rights issue. They want to take kids away from us in Canada if we don't allow them to go into public schools to be indoctrinated in LGBT propaganda.
Tell me if I'm right about this. Brian at Mass Resistance and I have often wondered about the leftist anger, especially among the LGBT community. They're, as you said, they're very hateful, but they're also intensely angry. Part of that is just because they don't want to face the truth that you're putting in front of them. But I also think they're just very unhappy people. And I know I listen to Rush Limbaugh when I'm driving around, and he's often said that the left is humorless. And it's because at the bottom they're very unhappy people. What do you think of that?
I would agree with that. I worked as a psychiatric nurse for 11 years and worked in the Toronto Gay District, caring for AIDS patients with health and mental health problems. And yeah, a lot of unhappiness, a lot of loneliness. I think there is an anger at the God they don't know. Sometimes they claim they don't believe in him, but obviously they pay a lot of attention to the God who they claim doesn't exist, because they're running around with pictures of him on their crotch. They got different anti-religious signs. One sign I remember in the '99 Gay Pride, F the Christian right. If we were really irrelevant, and if our message was irrelevant, you'd simply ignore us. Like, I think of animal rights activists, and I remember one time they were picketing outside a Swiss chalet talking about the murder of chickens. It didn't offend me that much. I just sat there and ate my chicken at the front of the window as I got a little chuckle out of these university students dressed up as birds. But our message really strikes a profoundly deep chord, and I think it is spiritual. I think some of their unhappiness and anger is spiritual, because they're unfortunately in bondage to the father of lies, Satan, and they're in darkness.
The other thing we've noticed is that Toronto Pride action you were involved in. You were dressed as green zombies in green bodysuits. I find that hilarious.
I also wore a rainbow tutu.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I find that hilarious, and I think because it was so funny to people on our side of the issue, and they have no humor on their side, I think that's another reason they're very angry at you. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I pulled one over on them, and they don't have any sense of humor. Like, they thought it was cute when the Russian anarchist group, which is Soros-funded, Pussy Riot, trashed a church, and they were grabbing their crotches and screaming and swearing on the stage. The Gay Pride thought that was funny. But yeah, I come in their parade disguised as a zombie and hand out accurate biblical information. These guys just can't have a sense of humor. Two years later, they're still trying to get me put in jail for a long time for this, which is ridiculous.
Yeah. Now, getting back to the Ontario criminal charge that's been brought against you, we have on our website massresistance.org the actual criminal code excerpt from Section 319, and when you read that, absolutely nothing applies to you. You're absolutely innocent when you
I have truth as a defense. I have religious conviction as a defense. I have not advocated for genocide. Unfortunately, the hate crimes are political. It's cultural Marxism, and they're not going to be applied fairly. If you got some, Pakistani who came to the country illegally and preached jihad, they possibly wouldn't get convicted under this, section, even though it would apply to them. But if you're a Christian and you speak the truth, even if you got all these defenses, the judges will ignore their own law and convict us.
So they're making it up as they go along.
Completely, they're lawless, our courts.
Yeah, completely separate from what's written in the criminal code.
Well, even the class action was illegal. That's like if you dump some toxins in a lake and you're a multinational company like BP with the Gulf of Mexico when they had that blowout, there would be a legitimate grounds for a class action. Lots of people were hurt. There's lots of damage. It's a big company with deep pockets. But to go after a private individual with a $104 million lawsuit because you gave zombie safe sex packages to gay activists, It was illegal. It was nuts, and yet the judge went along with it.
One of the other actions brought against you that's pending, I think there's a trial set for September in the Human Rights Tribunal of British Columbia. Again, that was an issue where you were simply speaking the truth.
Yeah, it was a guy whose birth name is Ronan Auger. At age 43, he left his wife and kids to enter a so-called lesbian relationship with what I assume is a perverted heterosexual woman. As Ronan, as far as I've heard from left-wing blogs and things, he still has his male part. But he's renamed himself Morgaine Auger. And he's a transvestite and an NDP activist and an absolute totalitarian. He actually called me a Christian jihadist just a couple days ago, and he was really happy that I'm getting arrested and deported to Ontario. He sees that as proportional justice for disagreeing with his agenda. And I put out flyers saying he's an NDP transvestite and that God doesn't want you to vote for him unless he repents, and that he's a biological male. And for that, the guy tried to get me in jail. He went to the RCMP to have me charged with a hate crime, and when that didn't work, he went to Elections BC, and they wrote me a threat letter and ordered me to go into the riding and take all my flyers back. Of course, I wouldn't even know where I distributed all of them. I was handing them out on the streets, so I just went back to the riding and delivered a few more. And then the BC Human Rights Tribunal listened to him, and he has me charged with discrimination for saying that God doesn't want you to vote for him and that he's a male who's deluded and thinks he's a woman.
Now, am I correct that he was also behind a lot of the transgender garbage that's in the public school system?
Oh yes, he became quite the avid activist. He hasn't been at it long, only about 5 years, because prior to that he was an admitted biological male. I got a picture of him in blue jeans and men's clothing with his kids, only back in 2013. But he's become an activist. He's the chair of the Trans Alliance, I believe. And he was one of the architects that worked on the Human Rights Code that I'm currently being prosecuted on. And he's been very active in the public schools and is somewhat responsible for the curriculum called SOGI, which is Sexual Orientation Gender Identity, which is taught to all school children, I think pretty much K to 12 here in British Columbia.
Mm-hmm. Something that Brian at Mass Resistance and I often wonder about is how so many people are falling for the absurd transgender ideology. Whether it's a judge or an elected official or school board people. Can you put any light on that?
I got some thoughts on that. I think a lot of these judges know better, but they are cultural Marxists. And you need to look at the Frankfurt School and how they said they're going to teach people to believe snow is gray. I think some of these judges are very anti-Christian. Some of the higher officials within the government and the public education system are anti-Christian. And pushing transgenderism is just one of many of the attacks on God and on our Judeo-Christian identity and heritage. I think when you get a little bit lower down the rung, when you get to individual teachers, correctional officers, police officers, they will lie and call a biological male a male, a female, or vice versa. But I think when you cut under the skin a little bit, as I have, you find most people don't believe Ronan Auger is a female. They will simply say he is to keep their job. And that's a big problem. I think most people know when you have a penis, you're not a woman. Maybe some 18-year-olds are sufficiently brainwashed in our public school to believe that garbage, but I think most people, the untruth can be dispelled pretty easily. It's just Canadians, and I think a lot of Americans even, don't have the courage to take it on for fear of losing your job or facing a human rights complaint in Canada. So we just go along with this in the hopes that we can have our retirement plan and take our vacations.
So what advice do you have for Americans? Obviously, here in Canada, you're a few steps ahead of us. It's very scary to those of us who are really paying attention, but how can we really stop this from getting to the point it is in Canada and
It's
the
important
U.S.?
to limit the power of your government. Unfortunately, the American government has grown, even though constitutionally it was supposed to be limited. And you need courage to speak the truth. I think when conservatives take power in the U.S., they need to take a lesson from the Obama administration and fire all the leftists, just the way Obama got rid of a whole lot of Christians and conservatives in the civil service during his reign of terror. Here in Canada, there's no problem discriminating against Christians and conservatives for all types of employment. For me, it's very hard to find and hold a job because of my social media, which simply expresses biblical truths. So I don't think the left has any grounds to cry discrimination if we keep them out of positions of power, because they abuse it and they're intolerant, and people have to see the enemy for what it is.
Well, we are really very concerned about what's coming up next for you. We know that you're going to be sent to Toronto today after the police take you into custody. Do you have any sense of what's going to happen? Are you going to be able to get bail? Are you going to be able to...
They wouldn't spend these kind of resources on me if they intended on catching and releasing me. I expect that they're going to oppose bail. Whether my lawyers are going to be able to get bail for me or not is an open question. I do know one case, a fellow by the name of Brad Love. I don't really agree with his cause per se. I do believe he had a right to free speech. I went and visited him in jail down in Ontario once. He denied the Holocaust, which I think something bad happened to the Jews myself. But you know, he believes that it's a conspiracy, and whatever. You could just ignore him, take his flyer, put it in the garbage. This guy spent 2 years solid in jail, and I kind of think that's what they got in store for me.
Well, that means that the Vancouver hearing may never happen.
No, it'll happen, even if I'm in custody.
So...
All of us in different capacities. Just
So-
say you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you, including reporting.
So, Bill, we're all really worried about not only you, but your family. This is just outrageous to think that you're going to be in jail and you have a family to support.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned for my wife. She's a type 1 diabetic. Here in Canada, if you're a heroin addict, you get free needles given to you by the government. I kid you not. I took photographs at the Insight in Vancouver where they're handing them out by the fistfuls to junkies, and they were just dropping them all over the sidewalk in the parks. It's horrible. But for a diabetic who needs needles to stay alive, that's an expense that we had to incur, and I was just about to get benefits that were going to cover that, but now obviously I won't have my job if I'm extradited to Toronto. And Jadrinka isn't really well enough to hold a full-time job, so yeah, I am concerned about that. Mm-hmm. We just got a place to live in Alberta, and we might be losing it if I go to jail. But for the left, they don't have any mercy. They'll be happy with that.
More of their hate.
Yeah, that is their hate. They don't care when they destroy our jobs and our families. They don't care. You know, they say you disagreed with homosexuals, you said something bad about them, and therefore you should be destroyed.
So what are the various ways that we can support you? Obviously, we could help with your attorney's expenses.
Yeah, he's. Don't go to GoFundMe. They actually throw Christians off. But Go Get Funding supports free speech for Christians, and I think you can put in Go Get Funding Bill Whatcott, and you'll see the fundraiser for the lawyer. And obviously, while I'm in jail, if people could maybe help my wife a little bit, that'd be great.
So can we set up another funding site for your wife and family?
Yeah, maybe.
Possibly.
Maybe that.
Okay, well, I hope your supporters in Canada get that set up. And
yeah, I won't be able to do it. I'm going to be in jail in 1 hour.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts about the next steps that are coming up? I mean, it's to me, it's just frightening to think about being in jail. I mean, everyone's talking about Tommy Robinson in jail. Well, now we're going to have to talk about Bill Whatcott in jail. This is just crazy.
Yeah, for me, there's a lot of sadness for Canada. And I did start this fight to try to increase the bar for freedom of speech and religious liberty. And it looks like, for my best efforts, that I've lost. Although I think God can turn it around. And we do have to have an eternal perspective. I do believe Christ is with me in Jadrinka, even though it looks so challenging. I do believe God is in control, and not a hair will be touched on my head unless He allows it. There is prosperity preaching, which is heresy, that God gives you health, wealth, and an easy life. Scripture actually says trials and tribulations. Some Christians have said that because I infiltrated the parade, that I deserve to go to jail, and this is God's punishment. I don't see that. I see it as paying the price for speaking the truth, and we can use creative methods to get that truth across. Many of the keyboard warriors in Christendom, they do nothing except critique on Facebook. You do have to get out on the street and bring the truth. And I think the fact that the Liberal government is expending these kind of resources on me is evidence that my gospel flyers were effective. And I do believe God will vindicate me, but there might be suffering in this life, and I'm prepared to go down that road.
You are definitely a very important person. You're the messenger that they want to kill.
Yeah,
Obviously.
I'm a flawed Christian, but that's greater than the greatest atheist. Yeah.
Well, we are just dumbfounded by your courage. I don't know if I'd have the courage to go to jail. I really don't think I would. But I think that it's going to wake a lot of people up, just as the situation in England has brought millions to the street, and I hope that happens here in Canada.
That would be nice. It would be worth it if I could see Canadians wake up and get worked up over something other than just their wages and benefits. Yeah, they should care about what's happening to this country. And I said that to a media person yesterday who asked if I had any regrets. And I said, my only regret is that you guys have allowed us to lose our freedom in this country. That's my only regret. And I did my best to speak up and bring these issues to light. Now it'll be up to others if I'm in jail.
Well, our thoughts are certainly going to be with you. So thank you very much for talking to us.
Thank you.